everybody, welcome to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And today, what Grant and I thought we would do is, instead of talking about a single card, Grant and I realized that we actually have talked about all three kind of normal play Aragorns. So what we want to do is kind of give a retrospect or a little bit of comparison of the three. And then I guess at the end, we'll probably rank them in order that we would use them or love them. And so this is our Aragorn comparison show. I don't know exactly what it is, but and this is going to exclude the Fellowship Aragorns. There's a bunch of Fellowship Aragorns that are out there, but these are the three kind of you can play in any scenario sort of Aragorn. So, Grant, what's the stat line of Aragorn?
Aragorn is 12 threat, cost 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, 5 hit points, and he's, as far as we've seen, he's always got the Dunedain and Ranger trait, which is sometimes added with Noble or Warrior, which we've seen to date.
So let's go down through. There's 3 Aragorns, and just very quickly, their stat line is all the same, but what does the Leadership Aragorn, or what we call Coragorn, because he comes from the core set, what does the core set Aragorn do?
Right, well, he's got Sentinel for start, and then he has a response. After he commits to the quest, you can spend one of his resources from his pool to ready him.
Okay.
And there's a note on here. As always, the response is optional, but if desired, it must be triggered immediately after Aragorn is committed to the quest.
Right.
This can't allow basically the quest to finish and then say, whatever's revealed, then you can do it. It's got to be done straight away.
Right. It's part of the FAQ, right? So this is how you use Aragorn. And then there's the tactics version, which I think is the one we tackled most recently. That comes from the Lost Realm. What is that Aragorn's special abilities?
Each enemy engaged with you gets -1 defense. And response after Aragorn participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, choose an enemy not engaged with you and engage that enemy. Okay,
and then there's the last one, which is the lore version. We talked about that for a long time with Ryan Kelly, but the lore version comes from The Watcher in the Water. And what does that one do?
Like the core version of Aragorn, it has Sentinel. But unlike it is only a Dunedain Ranger traits, but it has a special action. During the refresh, you get to reduce your threat level to the starting threat level. So if you're at 49 threat and you start off with 17 threat, you can drop right back down to 17 threat.
Right. And you can do that every player, if you were playing...
Every player can do it once per game.
Do it once. So if you were to pass Loragorn around, we call the lore version of Aragorn Loragorn. If we pass Loragorn around, you can do that. What's the card that allows you to pass a hero to the next player?
Desperate Alliance, I believe.
Yeah, where you're like desperately needing that card. So I guess what we're going to do is... Forgetting all the stats because they're all the same, so you're not playing Aragorn, one version of Aragorn over another because of the stats. Which Aragorn do you use? Like what do we got going on here? What do you think, Grant? Like how are you? What's your opinion of these Aragorns?
My opinion is they're all good and they are all useful for their situations. So if I'm building a deck that's wanting to get the best out of action advantage, I'd probably go with Coragorn. If I was doing a lot with raising my threat, I'd probably go for Loragorn. And if I was being the big hitter and just striking enemies and killing them, I'd go with Scorpagorn or Tactics Aragorn.
So basically, you're reading their traits and saying, well, if I'm building a deck like this, then that's what I'm going to use.
Yeah, it also
or their text box.
It's also based on whether or not I need the extra advantage from their abilities. If I'm building a deck and it's like, well, I want to build a deck with Aragorn because I want to use all these toys, it'll be the case of, right, well, which Aragorn do I go for? What other heroes have I got at my disposal that's going to make it beneficial for us to do that?
Right.
And then I'll build up around that, and I'll probably make the final, once the deck is semi-built and I've got the other two heroes or other hero, whichever way it's going, then I'll decide on which Aragorn to use.
Yeah, and here's my thing, is that I think that Aragorn is still 8 years after his development is still an amazing card to use. I think he's the most versatile of all of the Aragorns, and I think he fits into a lot of different decks because we're not talking about stat lines necessarily, but the fact that his stat line is so kind of even across the board, and you can spend one resource to have him ready, and in leadership you can get the resource acceleration that you need to keep him ready. I just think that is the best of the three in terms of abilities in a wide variety of decks.
I'd say he has more advantage over Lore Aragorn where it comes to how many times you're going to use him for a standard quest. Lore Aragorn is definitely niche. If you're raising threat high, you want a way to bring it right back down, and Lore Aragorn gives you a way to do that.
Yeah, but I still think the better one is the leadership guy, and then lost in the mix here, we're arguing about lore versus leadership. Is the tactics one, and I think the tactics one is a great card, well designed, very thematic. But I also think that that it really only fits in a deck where you want to engage. Kind of the deck archetype for Dunedain is to engage and keep enemies engaged with you and things like that. It's kind of the opposite of hobbits, where hobbits don't want anything engaged with them. And that's actually a great two-player version of a fellowship. You have somebody playing hobbits where you don't want anything engaged with you, and then you have the Dunedain. Like, it's very thematic because the Dunedain for years were protecting the Shire from things.
Well, not just the Shire, it was protecting the entire Northern Realm. So the lands of Bree, and right the way across into the Blue Mountains and the Grey Havens all that area was protected by the Dunedain.
Right, so I think that
ever vigilant but never seen.
Right.
Or rarely seen.
Right, and they never got any sort of credit for doing what they wanted to do. And that, I mean, in terms of that, but so I think that Scorpigorn card, Tactics Aragorn, I think fits into that deck archetype best for that Dunedain. But so I think that in terms of using Aragorn, I love Tactics Aragorn for what it does. Each enemy gets a -1 defense. So if you're the tactics guy, I think that this card is a card that you run. You can use tactics. Hero Beorn. I think that he's good because Hero Beorn, you can't have attachments and stuff like that. So I think that this guy helps with Hero Beorn. And so if you're playing multiplayer, this card is great to use multiplayer because you can just pull those enemies towards you. I think he loses value the less players you play with. And so,
I actually like him paired with Grimbeorn the Old, because then when Grimbeorn uses his effect, he's basically running any enemy with less than 4 defense doesn't count its defense, with both Grimbeorn and Aragorn basically being there.
Right, and I agree. Yeah, the whole thing, and then if you're running that deck, you could run Marksman of Lorien in there, and really, now you have 5 that aren't being counted. And so I think that Aragorn may be the most thematic of all the Aragorns, but I don't think he fits into a bunch of different decks. I think you're really stuck running that I need to engage things and kill it deck if you're going to use that tactics Aragorn.
Yeah, he's definitely thematic for the point in his life where this is depicting. He's depicting the time just after they've hit, I would say, just after the death of Boromir. And he's going hunting. He's hunting some orcs. And I think that's what it's depicted there with his thematic ability to engage enemies and pull them from all over.
Yeah. And so the kind of the stepchild that we're not talking about here is Loragorn, the lore version. And the problem that I have with Loragorn is he fits into a lot of different types of decks because of his threat lowering. And so, you can save deck slots because of that, but you're only using that ability once. And yeah, it's a big ability to use, but when you want to use a hero, and I don't necessarily say that you want a hero that's got a shiny, awesome ability, but I feel like you want a hero that you're going to trigger their ability more than just one time, especially for somebody that is such a high threat cost as Aragorn. When you have 12 starting threat, you want to be able to use an ability more than once. And so if you're going to splash Aragorn to give lore, then, for that ability, I'm not sure if that juice is worth the squeeze. I think you're going to do something else. So Lore Aragorn is the lowest on my list in terms of ranking these guys and what you're going to do. And that's what I was trying to say with Ryan is Merland, has the ability that you lower your threat, your starting threat by 1 for each lower hero you start with. I mean, I'm not discounting that as a certain character that you want to play with. The problem I have is that once you have that and you've used it, it's done. You don't have that ability anymore, and you kind of want your heroes to be, awesomer. I don't know if that's a word. And so that's what I'm trying to get across, is that I feel like if you're going to have these heroes and they're going to start your threat out at some level that's pretty high, you want to be able to use their abilities over and over again. And you can do that with Core Aragorn, Korgorn, and Scorpigorn. Those abilities you can use every round. You can have that going every round. And so while I think that the Loragorn's ability is thematic, I just don't think that he only fits into a certain type of deck style where you're raising your threat and using threat as for doomed, if you bring in Grima. I think Grima and Loragorn is a great combo to use, but I think that's just one type of deck you're using. Does that make sense? Am I verbalizing my issue that I have with Loragorn a little bit better?
You are making a little bit more. You're being a little bit more articulate.
Yes. Yeah. I've never been able to really articulate it. And when we said we were going to do this, I was like, I need to say what I feel in a way that people can understand. So go ahead.
Thematically, I like Loragorn. I just like the card. I mean, he's at the point of the book that I loved the meeting at the Prancing Pony and the chapters on Strider, and this visualized it, and it was like, yes, that is what I would have envisioned. And yes, his ability isn't going to be used in every game or in every deck, but I still think for if you're building a thematic deck, he is a good contender for any sort of area because he has knowledge of the lands from the far north of Fort North.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but that doesn't translate into the game. That's not. I mean, I get if you're trying to build thematics, and yeah, I'm a thematic game player, but that doesn't translate into being helpful in the game in any way. So when you use his ability, Loragorn's ability, you're still just using it once, and I get that it can be powerful if you're like when we talked to Ryan was like, what, you're at 49 threat and you want to reduce it back to 23 or whatever it is. Like, yeah, I get that's the one thing you're doing. But I argue that how many times are you playing a deck or playing a scenario where your threat is getting up that high? Do you know what I'm saying? That's my problem. So
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but again, for me, Aragorn is
right. See, your kid agrees with me. That's why That's why that's happening.
I'm just not even getting into that. But no, for me, he may not have the best ability. You may not be able to trigger it more than once. But when looking at the Aragorns, I am more lenient towards Loragorn and Coragorn than I am to Scorpagorn, because Scorpagorn, as you said, has a set deck type, which the same for Loragorn. He could be branded as a set deck type for the Dooms to drop your threat.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that deck is a great deck if people don't mind playing doomed decks, so I think that Grima and Aragorn and somebody else make a very good, doom deck where you're playing that sort of style with all the doom cards and things like that.
But even if you're not playing a doom deck, a Valor deck Aragorn could be useful in that, a lore Aragorn, because obviously once you hit a certain level, if you don't have a way of dropping it out, you're going to threat out.
Yeah, you're wrong.
I'm not wrong. I'm just going to let you believe your own
my own delusion. Let me read my own headlines here. Yeah. I just think that the strongest of the Aragorns that's set up time and time again is going to be leadership Aragorn. He's the strongest of the characters of the Aragorns. His ability isn't niche-y in terms of the deck type. He gives himself action advantage, which is amazing. He's got the noble trait, which is becoming more and more important as more and more cards come out. And so I think that leadership Aragorn is the best of the Aragorns.
Well, just for popularity on Rings DB, both Loragorn and Core Aragorn have 5 popularity, but the difference is there are 398 decks using Loragorn and 516 decks using Coragorn. So yes, he's more popular. Yes, he's got that built-in readying. So no one's disagreeing that he is the most powerful out of the most used out of all 3 Aragorns. But that's not to say that each of them don't have their strengths in situations.
I agree. If anybody gets from this that each of them don't have a place in the game, that's not what I'm saying. We were charged with making an episode where we wanted to compare which ones are better than the others, so it's kind of like a Sophie's choice that we're making, like which of the best heroes in the game are better than the best, and so I believe that all 3 should be in the game, and I really like all 3, however much it seems like I'm hating on Lore Aragorn. I just think that if we're rating these guys, Core Aragorn's got to be first. He's got to be the best, and then it's got to be Scorpagorn because he fits the archetype and the mold, and he does a thing that can be repeatable. And I think if you're playing tactics, with more than just one type of deck, he's effective. And then the last one for me is going to be Lore Aragorn, because that ability, for what I said 5 minutes ago, I don't know. Well, what's your take on the whole thing? Although I think I know what it is.
I'd agree with you that Core Aragorn is probably going to be more used because of the fact that he's self-reliant. He doesn't need to have other things going on to work in a deck.
Right.
Lore Aragorn and Tactics Aragorn, they have their own unique game styles. And yes, both have niche. Well, for you, Lord Aragorn's a niche for a deck. In Tactics Aragorn, you want to be able to kill enemies that you're bringing down to you and have a way of constantly having Aragorn ready so that every enemy you're engaging, you're killing. Now, that may work with the Dunedain deck, or it may be a deck designed that you deal with that another deck deals with the defenses, and then Aragorn just brings them over and smashes them with readying. A good deck type that I've seen is Aragorn with Merry, Tactics Merry, where Merry readies Aragorn and Aragorn smashes. Merry readies with the Rohan Warhorse and smashes again. And it's an effective tool, but if I'm going off power, then I've got to say that they both join second for me because I've used both and I like both.
You can't have a tie.
I can't put one higher than the other in my own personal opinion because of the fact that they have both got great uses. And I mean, yes, you could do Tactics Aragorn's every turn, but again, that threat reduction from Aragorn is key for certain decks, so I can't place one above the other. They are both have their own reliances on certain things to be as effective as possible.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty clear cut. I think that
Aragorn, because you just hate Aragorn.
Yeah, right. I'm a Aragorn hater. So we both agree that leadership Aragorn is tops. Probably not by much either. Like both of us agree that he's probably really good, and he fits into all sorts of different decks. But I think it's pretty clear cut in my mind that Tactics Aragorn is better than Aragorn. So I'm not going to hedge my bets. I'm going to firmly put the order as Koragorn number 1, Scorpigorn number 2, and Aragorn number 3.
And we'll have this discussion when Spirit Aragorn comes out.
I know. Wouldn't that be amazing if Spirit Aragorn gets released in the next cycle?
But what I'm saying is, no matter what, at the minute, with the game the way it is, Aragorn and Scorpigorn are joined second. I can't break them apart because they are both equally niche-y, as David likes to put it.
Spirit Aragorn is going to fit for me number 3. It's going to fit between tactics and lore. I know it.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, no, it will. It will. I'm going to just know that it's going to go there. That's
right. Well, if it doesn't, and somehow this Spirit one goes in between 1 and 2, we can all point and laugh at David. Right now.
Well, now I know that it's going to. Like, now I can just make my opinion that it's after Tactics Aragorn, but before Aragorn.
Anyways. If you remember me.
Okay. So I guess just kind of closing up the show, if you're trying to come up with a deck from scratch and you want to figure out what is going on, use this episode about Aragorns to try to, maybe help you hone in on a neat deck or something that you want to do, and it's pretty good. So that's really what we wanted to do. I saw somebody post in Facebook the other day that, which Aragorn would you want to use, or what's the difference, or how does it work? And so I think side-by-side comparison like this can help people kind of figure out where they want to go with the game and where they want to go with deck building.
One thing I will say is that Leadership Aragorn has a lot of tools at his disposal right off the bat, like Sword That Was Broken in Calabrian Zone, and
Rohirrim, his
horse Rohirrim, and then that also gives them access to the Spirit Icon, which gives them the Ring of Barahir, which then gives them access to the Lore Sphere as well. So, straight off the bat, Leadership Aragorn is already shown that he's a cut above tactics in Lore, because he's already got access to his tools.
Right, and so it's not that the other Aragorns can't use them, it just becomes a little more difficult to get them on there. You have to give them a Song of whatever, Song of Leadership. I don't know why they didn't just call them.
Or have another couple of leadership heroes or what have you.
Something
because the Song of the Sword That Was Broken also gives the attached character the leadership trait.
Right. So something. You need something there. So yeah.
Yeah. But those are just our opinions. They are not canon or whatever you want
they're
to call
canon.
it.
They are being recorded, and you are stuck with them for the rest of your life. You have to go with them. Forget this.
Whoa.
You're being too nice to the listeners who can't form their own opinions and need us for their opinions. No, I'm just kidding.
What I'm getting at is each of them has their own scenario where they shine.
Yeah.
Each of them have their own benefits. So look at what you're building, look at what you're going to play against, then make your decision.
Right. And always decide on leadership, Aragorn.
That's just David's bias.
Right.
You may want to go with Aragorn.
Right. No. Okay. So, okay, everybody. That wraps up our show comparing the standard episode, the standard Aragorns, and how to use them in kind of a ranking. So join us next time for another episode of Card Talk. Have a great day, everybody. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube, where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username CardTalk2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at CardTalk2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself, or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.